Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you.
All right, guys, if you don't have a Bible, go ahead and get one. If you don't have your phone in the phone bucket, stick your phone in the phone bucket. If you're not going to summer camp, you should sign up for summer camp. If you haven't pet a kitty lately, you should pet a kitty. If you haven't brushed your teeth lately, you should brush your teeth. If you haven't changed your underwear lately, you should have underwear. If you're having trouble affording clean underwear, please see us afterwards. Yes, Hannah.
Someone was asking about when is the cutoff to sign up.
Good question. I don't have it memorized. Let me look it up real quick. Oh, I turned on subtitles again. Don't need no subtitles. Let's see. If you don't know, you can go look up the information yourself also, just FYI, but I'll pull it up for you. You can go to ccchico.com/MSSC, Middle School Summer Camp, MSSC, or else you can just go to our webpage, go to Connect, to middle school, and it's like the first thing. Camp is on! Click that, and there you go. Summer camp info. Okay, so sign up dates, not until May 3rd. That's a lie. That's the discount cutoff. The actual sign up cutoff is June 21st. So you have until like the third week of June to sign up. So first come, first serve. We only have so many slots. You can come check out the page at any point. We have 7 slots left for girls. We have 8 slots left for boys. After that, I would literally have to have an influx of like multiple new leaders in order to secure like an extra cabin and take more of you with us, which is unlikely. So I'll put you on a wait list if you sign up after this, like set up 8 and 7 slots are gone, but no guarantees of wait list people ever going to camp. It's never happened. It doesn't mean God can't do it, it just means it hasn't happened yet. So yeah, 8 slots left for the boys, 7 slots left for the girls. Sign up soon. ccchico.com/MSSC, Middle School Summer Camp. Okay, that all settly deadly. Let's open up our Bibles to the book of Exodus, starting off in verse 28 of chapter 21. And let's get our light. I can read. Oh. So, Exodus chapter 21 has been just a super duper fun chapter, right? Who was here last week? Who had lots of fun learning about slavery and employment laws?
Everyone put your hand.
Come on, you know that was the best time you had all summer.
You gotta be zero.
But it hasn't technically been summer yet.
But it's not summer yet.
I feel like no one understands that that's why that sentence was a joke.
Exodus 22. Hilarious.
I know. I do my best to be awful at humor. That way I always succeed. Exodus chapter 21. So we are starting towards the end of the chapter today. That is intentional because we've already done the rest of the chapter. There's only a teensy bit left. It's just about negligence. Like that's all the rest of the chapter. Now, this part of the chapter may not seem entirely important. I mean, laws about negligence, not that big a deal, right? But it is pretty cool when you stop and think, because I'm a geek. I like to geek out about stuff. If you look into the law, the way it's progressed over the thousands of years that we've had societies and we've had governments and we've had laws is really interesting. Most societies did not have negligence laws until the last couple thousand years, at best, really the last 1,000 years for most of the world. And yet, in the Old Testament, the second book of the Bible, God puts out this tiny little bit in chapter 21 that are negligence laws. Does anybody know what a negligence law is? Okay, here's my little story, okay? So I'm like a little 8-year-old, maybe 7-year-old, I can't quite remember. And I'm driving to Colorado with my whole family. We're gonna be in my cousin's wedding. My little sister's like the flower girl. I'm the ring bearer or something. No, I was actually like the groomsman. That's right, I was like the youngest groomsman. They had this like line of groomsmen and there's like the 8-year-old on the end. For some reason, they just wanted every single male in the family in the wedding party. So there's like, I don't know, 9 or 10 of us. So I'm in the wedding. We're driving to Colorado. We stop at a McDonald's, and my mom is on crutches. This is from a prior injury. And we go into McDonald's, and on the way to the restroom, the floor has been mopped, but there is no wet floor sign. And she's just crutching along to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, the crutch hits the wet part of the floor, and it's not a foot, you know, so you don't feel things like you would with a foot. It just zoop, and now she's like just flying out sideways, and she tries to catch herself, and she's just like continuing to slide like on ice, just continuing. And she sticks out her already hurt leg and like tries to catch herself, and it slams the heel down, and it cracks her heel on the floor trying to catch herself. And then she goes into the splits, and then she falls over, and like, you know, it was a whole awful thing. All could have been avoided if she just knew the floor would have been mopped recently. So here's the question: whose fault is this accident?
The person who mopped the floor.
Yeah, probably who mopped the floor and didn't put down the sign.
Interesting you would say that, because the law says it's not. It's McDonald's fault.
Well, yeah.
Isn't that
McDonald's
weird?
worker.
It's McDonald's fault.
Yeah.
Not like
Ronald
the
McDonald.
CEO of McDonald's. Not like the manager of this branch of McDonald's.
Not Ronald.
Not Ronald.
How about
not
McDonald?
of course.
Someone here's actually funny. It's not me.
How about
Not
McDonald?
Ronald.
It's McDonald's the corporation. That they share responsibility when one of their employees doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and then something bad happens because of it. It's like if you went to cook burgers and you didn't start the burger cooking timer, and you're like, it looks cooked, and then you feed someone raw beef. It looked cooked. That's negligence. You're supposed to start the timer so you can't make that mistake. You're supposed to put down the wet floor sign so you can't make that mistake. So that's negligence. You failed to do the thing you were supposed to do to keep people safe. And even though the results were an accident, you didn't actually go out there and like pull a tripwire and watch the lady on crutches fall, right? You didn't go to the burger grill and take a bunch off early and like, they'll never know what hit them. Like, you didn't do something evil, you forgot to do something good. Does that make sense? That's negligence. So most civilizations for thousands and thousands of years did not have negligence laws. They just said, oh, well, it was an accident. Sucks to be you. What? Yeah, sucks to be you. That's it. That's the end of it. So, what does God say instead? Who would like to read verse 28? I didn't leave my slides out. Oh yeah, phone in the bucket.
On box.
It's a
box.
Okay. Yes. So, chapter 21, starting at verse 28. Who would like to read? Judah, be my guest.
If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox must be stoned, and its flesh may not be eaten in such a case. However, the owner will be healed liable.
No, wait, read that last bit again.
Held liable.
Before that?
However, the owner will not be held liable.
You forgot the not, which is the most important part of the sentence. So I had to have you read it again. You somehow magically skipped over only that word. Not. And it means the opposite if you skip it, right? Like the sentence goes backwards. So yeah, it says here, if the ox kills someone, then the owner is not held liable. So if your dog just randomly bites someone's throat out, if your ox just randomly gores someone in half, if your cat just randomly scratches someone's eyes out and they wander off a cliff, like none of these things are directly your fault. You did not take the cat and throw it on their face, right? This is just a random happenstance. It's not your fault. They don't transfer blame to you, the human. It is still their fault. The ox's fault, the cat's fault, the dog's fault. Yeah, it's still their fault. And so they still get put down as a consequence. Now, an ox is a special case in that it was an animal meant for food too. And so they said, but you don't eat it. You don't give it the satisfaction. Like, he's just punished dead, not dead for eating dead. Yeah,
Why would they stone an ox?
that's a really good question.
And not just kill it.
The same answer, weirdly, very weirdly, for why do you stone a murderer, according to Exodus, and you don't just decapitate them or throw them off a cliff? Like, why is it that you stone that person? Why do you throw rocks at them until they're dead? The answer is they wanted the whole community to have to agree on this, to this. You couldn't just be sneaky about putting someone or even an animal to death. You couldn't say, well, they deserved it, so I killed them. And everyone gets back and like, wait, what was the evidence? Oh, it's too late now. He's already dead. So you have to get everyone together. The whole community would have to be part of this killing to make it be just. To make it not just be one person killing one person because they thought that person was guilty. That's right back to killing and even murder. So you've got to spread out the killing so that it's the whole community deciding, nope, this person's guilty, this animal's guilty, this is right. We're doing it because it's right. All right, who's got verse 29? Oh, a question first? Go for it.
What happens if just one person
Then that's not really a stoning. That's an attack.
is throwing rocks?
You're just throwing rocks at a cow.
Oh, yeah, what you-
And there's something wrong with you at that point, not the cow. Sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
But suppose the ox had a reputation for goring, and the owner had been informed but failed to keep it under control. If the ox then kills someone, it must be stoned, and the owner must also be put to death.
Dun dun dun. So in the first instance, it was a random happenstance. Okay? Just out of the blue, the ox gores someone, you don't blame the owner. However, if the ox has a record and the owner knows this animal is dangerous and the owner does not protect the population around him by doing the right thing, fencing in the ox, tying up the ox, having someone watch the ox, killing and eating the ox next in line, like let the other oxen who don't gore people live, and we'll eat gory Joe first. Like, if he doesn't do something to protect the population around him, then it's right back to negligence, like we talked about. You don't put up the wet floor sign, but you made the floor wet. You were the perfect person to put up that sign. You were the person whose job it was, and you didn't do it. Now it's on you if an accident occurs. Now again, there's no punishment that God's handing out for not tying up your ox. Keep in mind that that's not what the punishment's for. The same as there shouldn't be a punishment for forgetting the sign when you mop, right? If someone catches the fact that you forgot the sign, they don't go straight to punishment. They say, hey, dingus, you forgot the sign. Go put the sign out, right? That's like the right thing to do if you notice someone is being negligent, is not to immediately punish them. It's to correct them, teach them, remind them. However, when bad things happen because of that negligence, now the consequence of the bad thing falls on you. The guilt is yours. That's the way the Old Testament talks about guilt, is that it's owned by someone the same way a debt is owned by someone. Now, a debt is a weird thing to own because, like, it's the lack of money, right? It's the absence of money. You have negative dollars. How can you own negative anything? But that's how the Bible talks about it. When debt exists, it's yours. You own it. You would actually have to sell it, which is the same as paying it back, to not have that debt on you. And the same with guilt. Guilt is yours until you pay for it. It's stuck on you. You own it. And you can't just give it away. People don't want it.
But why?
It's guilt. It comes with punishment. So, you are negligent, the punishment falls on you. Now, there is an exception, and this is the way we've been seeing God hand out these rules. All the rules so far have come with exceptions. Even in this chapter, which is all capital punishment. It's all these death sentence offenses and crimes. There's always exceptions. So here we go. First exception, verse 30. Who's got verse 30? Someone? Yeah.
However, payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life as payment for whatever is demanded.
Oh yeah, yours is a lot shorter. Dang. What translation is that?
It's,
NIV. Yeah, okay. I think we can have like a whole extra sentence to try and clarify that. The idea is that the person who is responsible for the person who died, which I know is a complicated sentence, but depending on who died, that could be very different people. Okay, it could be a kid who died. Now you're talking about the parents. It could be a gal who died. Maybe it's her husband. Maybe it's her father. Maybe it's her grandfather. Like, we don't know the family structure of whoever got killed. He's just making an assumption that there is family attached to that person. That family could say, you know what? We know our son, and he likes to, go poke at the oxen and, like, make fun of them. So we don't fully blame you. Even though this was an oxen that should have been put down by now, even though you were being negligent, we think our son provoked the oxen. We think, this circumstance is not cut and dry, so we're not asking for the death penalty. We're not asking for you to die, even though it was your fault that this oxen was able to kill our son. So the family can actually mitigate the death sentence in this particular instance. God makes that allowance. And he says they can even demand money as payment in replacement of a life lost. And again, like, this is a weird concept because, you know, if you just came out with this, you're like, yeah, you can buy lives. Is this a video game? Like, what are we talking about here? This doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're looking to forgive, but it still is like a huge loss. I don't know. For instance, maybe it's a small family, the parents are getting quite old, and the boy who died is the primary earner in the family. And you do want to forgive the person who was negligent and their ox killed your son, but you also stand to be poor and starved to death if nothing else happens. The primary person who worked your farm is now dead. Maybe that's your situation. Then you can go to that person who was negligent, they let this ox out, and this ox killed your son, and you can say, yeah, I want to forgive you, but I would starve to death if I just stayed as is. If I just kept living my life the way I'm living it, minus the person who your ox killed, my livelihood's gone. So now you can ask for money in replacement for that person. So you're not replacing the person with money, you're replacing essentially the money they would be able to earn you, the way they would have kept you alive if they had not been killed by the ox. So that's up to the family though. And that's kind of cool that God leaves that up to the family. So you can judge it situation by situation. He says the guilt is on the person who was negligent, but the punishment is not concrete. It doesn't have to go that way. Why? Well, it's not actually murder. This isn't actually a person hating another person and then getting them killed. This is very different from that. This is a person being negligent. So we keep going. There's other kinds of negligence. There's other examples and edge cases that God wants to cover so that people are clear on what to do in these weird instances. Who would like to read verse 31? Go for it. I haven't learned your name yet. What's your name?
Aiden.
Aiden. Are you Aiden man?
Yeah, but
Aiden with an AI?
yeah.
You do exist. I thought for sure you were a typo. Did you know we have another Aiden man?
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys know each other?
Yeah, he was
That's so
in
weird.
the other class down there, and he was also at Pine Ridge with me for a couple of days, but then we had to split up in classes because me and the teacher were just
I can't even imagine. You guys were born in the same year too, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know this. I've been puzzling over this for like a week because you signed up for something online, and I don't really know you by face yet. And so like I saw Aiden man signed up for something, but with like a different spelling of Aiden, and I honestly was wondering like, do his mom and dad disagree on how to spell his name?
Confusion.
Like, what is happening here? The other Aiden, you guys may know with the curly hair, is Aiden with an A-Y.
Yeah.
It's like, blows my mind.
I
Okay.
don't know.
How you guys both ended up at the same church in the same city is just
Yeah,
like wild. to me.
I don't understand.
It's not like the world's most common pairing of names either. Like, it really isn't. You're the only two families with the last name man with two N's that I've ever met. And you both
Yeah,
have an Aiden.
I've never been able to keep up with the concept. I'm very confused.
You know, your parents just both thought alike. That's okay. That's fine. All right, sorry, Aiden. Didn't mean to derail the conversation. Verse 31.
So 31. Okay. This. Yeah. The same
Regulation.
regulation applies if the ox gores a boy or a girl.
So this is a edge case that God is putting his foot down on, and I think it's really cool because this goes against their culture back then, that children were counted the same as employees in the legal sense. They were not counted the same as adults. And even beyond that, like, women were not counted the same as men. Men were considered earners, and they were worth all the money that they would earn in their entire lifetimes. And so if you took a man out of a family, they were worth like this giant dollar amount. And women were measured the same way, and yet not fairly so. They were considered to be worth the money they would earn, and then they were valued at much, much less monetarily. And so like, anytime payment was required, men got this much, women got this much, kids got like nothing. It's just, they're $0. They don't count. And so God actually says, in this instance, it's the same for, and I love the phrase, boys and girls. Because what that does is in the same short little sentence says, I don't care about the age or the gender. The law's the same. That's really cool. I don't know if you guys can latch onto how cool that is. Thousands of years, rising and falling of civilizations before we got back to this understanding of human importance. God set this up in Exodus. This is over 3,000 years ago. And we only recently have had understanding under the law that men and women, boys and girls, are equal in terms of value of life. And God said it all the way back here, almost as a footnote. He just assumed it. To him it was obvious. And to the rest of humanity it took thousands and thousands of years. That's really cool. And it's been preserved for us that we can go back and we can look at it. Okay, then we get into the next part of the edge case, verse 32. Anybody? Yeah, Dylan.
But if an ox orders a slave, either male or female, the animal's owner must pay the slave's owner's
30.
30 slave coins.
Silver coins.
Silver coins.
Just like,
And the ox must be
Yeah.
stoned.
Yes, and the ox must be stoned.
Slave coins. Luckily that doesn't exist.
I was looking at two sentences at the same time.
That's hard. That's okay. So we went
Closer.
over slavery in depth 2 weeks ago. We re-mentioned it again last week. And we've talked about it both times in this really important context. That slavery in the Old Testament, right here in Exodus, as it talks about Hebrew slaves, slavery in Israel. Hey, Gavin, no one's allowed in the kitchen unless you're like a leader. If you want to play with that, it's got to be quiet, and I don't know if that's physically possible. Give it a try, but if it's not quiet, and Hannah, you can help him out with discerning if it's quiet. You got to put it away.
Sorry, I haven't eaten lunch.
That doesn't make it easy.
Eating breakfast.
That too.
I'm gonna take my money and
All right, so they said you have to pay him 30 silver coins. What is this about? Well, the same rule above applies. And if you look at the Hebrew, it's rather clear. It's not exempting everything God has said up to this point. It's adding to everything God has said up to this point. So everything you just said, all is still true for a slave. And what did we talk about last week and the week before? Slaves under this government, under this legal system, were closer to what we would call an employee. They were a lot less like slaves. They weren't forced into it. They chose to be that. They were paid for it. They had the full rights of a normal human being. They were not property in the object sense. The only thing their master owned was their work output. So what is God saying here? Well, he's tacking on all of the original punishments, all the original rules, and if they're already someone else's employee, you have to pay their master. You don't just owe the family, you don't just owe your life, you don't just owe the death of the animal, you additionally owe payment to the master who now lost an employee, lost the work output of that employee. And the price was the price of a full term of work. So under their law, you could only work for like 6 years and you had to be released on the 7th. And so the 30 shekel price was like that full term of work. So this is where it got interesting. When you killed someone's worker, you paid the full price out on their contract, no matter what the contract was. That's interesting. So you're actually overpaying in almost every sense. Unless it was their very first day of work, you were overpaying. You were paying full price. Does anybody else know what that number is right here? The 30 silver coins? 30 shekels? Anybody, no one knows what that is? It's an important price. It's the price that the Pharisees gave to Judas when he turned on Jesus. And they said, will you sell him out? Will you sell Jesus to us? And they paid him 30 silver coins. Isn't that interesting? The price of a life. Very interesting to me anyways. Okay, now we get into verse 33. Again, more edge cases, more outside of the box examples. Who would like to read verse 33? Peach.
And if a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in it.
Verse 34. Anyone? Weston?
The owner of the pit must pay full compensation to the owner of the animal, but then he gets to keep the dead animal.
Isn't this a weird one? I love this. The phrase in the NLT, the owner of the pit. Does anyone here own any pits?
I do.
I have 2. I've never had anyone fall into them, luckily. I'm sure that happens like all the time in Ultimate Frisbee, but it's never happened to me. No, so the idea is if you're digging a pit, what would you be digging it for? Does anyone know why you would do that?
Burying
Yeah? Yes, maybe. Actually, you know what? I take that back. In their culture, it's not exactly how they did it. But yeah, what?
I don't know, like a fireplace? A fireplace or something.
Sure, maybe you're going to cook. Okay, could be like a cooking pit.
Where
Anyone
the
else?
animal-
To what?
Trap an animal.
To trap an animal.
Trap an ox.
Apparently. No, there's legitimate good reasons to do this that don't involve like breaking animals' legs. Yeah.
Well,
A well to like get water, right? You dig a well. Now, usually when you dig a well and you're halfway done, because you wouldn't finish in a day. It's not a one-day project. You would just have a hole in the ground. There'd be no water at the bottom. It wouldn't be functional. It'd just be a hole. Okay, but you're halfway done and you have to go home. You're going to go eat dinner. You're going to go sleep. You're going to come back tomorrow and work on the well some more. When you leave your hole in the ground, you're supposed to cover it. You're supposed to do something to keep animals from just like, You don't want to come back the next day and have like this half-dead, moaning, groaning ox in your hole in the ground. That's really unpleasant. It is not fun to move an ox with a broken leg. It is just not a good time. So you cover the pit. You put up a little fence around it. You do something so the animals don't just wander into it. And if you're lazy or you're tired, you're like, oh, it's so late. I just want to go home. I can smell dinner. It's cooking. I don't want to cover the pit. It's like hard. You would just leave the pit open and go home, and now you're being negligent. And again, maybe nothing happens. Maybe no one comes by, no animal wanders by, and it's fine. Again, is there any punishment for that? No. No, you just whack them upside the head and you say, dummy, you're supposed to cover it. Get on it, man. You can't be lazy about this. This could cost you a whole animal. This could kill a human. What if they walked over it in the middle of the night? Now, most humans are looking where they're going enough, are smart enough to notice a hole in the ground and just like avoid the hole in the ground. So that's why it lists out animals first, because this would be the most likely consequence of digging a pit and then not covering it. Now, eventually, once you're done and you've made a well, it's a finished, completed, useful well, you'd have a wall around it because you don't want dirt being scuffed into the well. You don't want random leaves blowing down the path to like fall into the well. So you'd stick up a little wall. But that's like the last step. Like that's when you're totally done making the well. So on all these days while you're still working on it, it's really easy to fall in. So yeah.
What if a person falls in? Do you have to pay or?
I think at that point, these laws aren't going to give you a direct example, but they paint the picture of yes. It'd be the same as letting your Gory Joe ox out free. Like you've done something negligent and now it's your fault. The guilt is on you for the consequences that came from your negligence.
Mm-hmm.
So the examples here are animals because that's the most likely.
What if it was
For
your
instance?
well?
That is the example. Oh, like your well and
that
your
you
animal?
fell in.
Yeah, you already had the consequence. Like the consequence directly befell you. The guilt was on you. The punishment was on you the second you fell in. No extra punishment would be needed. It's the same as mopping a floor and then slipping on it. Who are you going to blame? Like
The
the
mom.
mop.
the mom.
Now what happened? The mop must be stoned.
The mom.
Wait, the what?
Yeah, Dylan.
What if you push an animal in there?
That's not negligence. That's a whole other set of laws. That's just animal cruelty. Malicious
Animal
intent.
abuse.
That's like the same as the difference between murder and the person getting gored by Gory Joe. Like, you just murdered them. You don't look at this section of the law. You go back to the one about murder. Yeah.
How deep is the well?
Oh, I don't know how deep. Someone should look that one up. How deep can a human dig in a day of work? Like an
Okay.
8-hour dig? I don't know the
By
answer
hand.
to this. Yeah, like what's the
It
diameter of the
depends.
hole?
It depends on how lazy they are.
Yeah.
It depends on how.
You're
lazy
right.
they
I think he does hole digging math in the movie. I think he does. I think there's a bit of dialogue about how to do hole digging math.
I've seen somewhat of that.
Well, I think it
Where he's
just
like
said-
talking about how much dirt fits on a shovel, how many shovelfuls you do per
I think
minute,
it's
like
how many children.
how wide is the hole in a circle, how many square miles. Like they do the whole thing. Yeah, Judah.
If a baby dies from, I mean, if a pregnant woman dies from childbirth, can you charge the baby?
Judah.
Oh,
Like-
I thought we were gonna bring goring oxes back into this. I was very concerned. That's interesting thought pattern there. No, because, and this is interesting, the child didn't ask to be born. You did. You asked the child to be born.
Serious question.
Does that make sense?
So it's
When the decision was made to have a child, the child didn't exist. It couldn't have been the one who made the decision. It's the parents. The parents decided to have a child, so it's their fault. I hate to say fault. That's like it's like the complete wrong phrase. Guilt? No, it still doesn't work. But yeah, no, the parents decided to have a kid. Yeah, Weston.
So last week we were talking about if a guy strikes a woman in premature birth.
That's where I thought he was going.
Wait, what happens if an animal strikes a woman?
Okay, that is where I thought he was going. Yeah, same basic idea, but now there's 2 lives on the line. So you judge both instances independently, and the person whose fault it is, the guilty party, they suffer the consequences of 2 different actions, whatever those consequences will be. So if the baby's born and the baby's fine, the law says, at least in the Old Testament, you don't judge them for that. So if the baby's born and the baby's fine, you don't judge them for that. Obviously, it's not like the best way. They should come to full term. They should finish growing inside the womb before they're born. But if the baby survives and there's no like ill consequences for the baby, they don't get punishment for that. Same for the woman. Like, if the woman has, lasting wounds, if the woman dies, if the woman like has some kind of ill effects from that, then yeah, the consequence is on you. The guilt is on you. And then likewise, if they both suffer a consequence, the woman is severely hurt and the child dies. The child severely hurt, the woman dies. Like, you add up the consequences. Now, obviously, you can't go beyond the death penalty, but some of these required money too. And so if there was money, you would add the money up. If there was money and death penalty, now you pay the money and then you have to die. Like, you just stack your consequences.
Would it be like if there's money and death penalty, would you?
You definitely pay first.
Would the owner pay and the ox have to die, or would the owner die?
Oh, yeah. So we covered that slightly, not in the pregnancy instance, but it still applies.
Yeah.
That if you're guilty, like you knew your ox was a goring ox, it just does it all the time, and you didn't tie it up, you didn't fence it in, you didn't try to stop it, right? Then you're punished and the ox is punished. The ox is punished in both instances. The ox is always guilty and sometimes you're guilty. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, it's weird, he doesn't cover the edge case. What if you tried to stop it, but he basically makes it clear in the language. So like, what if you tried to stop it but the ox got out, right? Then it's still not your fault because you tried. But you would have to prove that to the elders. You'd have to prove that to the community. I tried. Look at the fence he busted through. This looked ox-proof. Look at the fence. Like, and then you could make the case that it's not really your fault.
I tried.
No, doesn't work like that.
I tried.
Okay, let's keep going.
Wait.
We got 34. Oh, another question, Dylan.
What if someone jumps the fence that they put them in and then they start poking the ox? Who would be blamed for that?
Again, you'd have to go case by case on that. You would have to prove that that even happened, and that would be hard unless someone was there as a witness. And then the law says you need 2 witnesses. You can't just have 1 witness. So like it gets more complicated, but they have a whole system that they develop over time where judges are implemented, and the judges hear the testimony, and the judges choose based on a set of guidelines. Like, you need 2 witnesses that agree. You can't let the witnesses talk to each other. They have to agree independently. And so like when all that's said and done, then you're supposed to just believe the account. You're supposed to take what the independent witnesses tell you and then judge who's at fault in this case. And if you can't get 2 witnesses to agree, you pretend like the witnesses don't exist. You go simply on the physical facts. So it's like, it's complicated, but yeah, it'd be case by case. Just kind of like how ours is now. You have a set of principles, you have a set of laws, but then you have to just listen to the evidence, listen to the witnesses, and make a call.
Also, what if like an ox trainer got killed? Whose fault would that be?
Oh man, yeah, I don't even know. Is he an employee? Does he work for himself? Is he training someone else's ox? Is he training his own? Like, again, case by case.
How do you train an ox?
Actually, I don't know. I'm not an ox trainer. All right, who's got verse 35? Let's finish this up. Judah. Oh wait, did someone who not read want to read? I think Judah read. Did you have your hand up?
I did earlier, but I don't really want to.
Okay, go ahead, Judah.
Which verse?
35.
If someone's ox enters a neighbor's ox, the injured ox dies, then the 2 owners must sell the live ox and divide the price equal between them. They must also divide the dead animal.
So if an ox kills an ox, or another animal kills another animal, let's say, then you would split the price of both animals and each keep half. this is a really interesting law. We still use this principle to this day in most fender benders. So like car accidents where there's no injuries occurred. Like the humans in the car don't get hurt, just the cars get hurt. If it happens in a parking lot, most insurance companies will just say, you both pay half. And like, they don't care whose fault it was.
What happens if it's like off the into the
No, don't go. I'm not an insurance adjuster. I have no idea. I have no idea what the edge case is. But like, we still use this wisdom to this day. In an instance where you can't easily prove whose fault it is, you just assume it's 50-50 and just work off that assumption. You don't even bother with the actual facts of it's slightly more his fault, slightly less his fault. Who started the fight? Or like, you literally have these instances where God just knows you humans aren't going to know whose fault it really is. You're going to be guessing. So just each of you take half, call it a day. You lost. Both of you lost, okay? You started each with one living ox, and now you have like 75% the price of an ox, right? Because you sell and the living ox and get 50-50, and then you sell the dead ox and get 50-50. So you end up with like 75% the price of a living ox, and when you used to both have a living ox. It's not great, but it splits the losses. It makes it the most fair you could make it. It also means it discourages trickery. You can't work out this situation to where you can secretly kill an ox, blame it on an ox, and then like come out ahead. You always lose, no matter if you pretend to be the owner of either ox. Like, you can't game that system. The system's designed to equally penalize everyone.
Unless you kill both 2 oxen.
No, it still doesn't work, because then you just sell 2 dead oxes.
What if
You'd
the
end up with half the price of a living ox, and you started with a whole living ox. Like, it doesn't work.
No, meaning if you kill the other person's ox, but don't hurt your ox.
Yes, but then you would still sell your ox. That's the punishment. You both sell your ox. You sell the dead one, you sell the living one, you split the price of both. So you still come out behind in both cases. So that way you can't game it. You can't cheat.
Kill 4 oxen.
It doesn't work.
Stop.
It's designed to not
Are you
work.
planning to go and kill oxen?
No.
There's like an ox killing side business Dylan has next week we find out about.
Yeah, but he's gonna do it with one stone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, who wants verse
I
36?
have a question.
Yes.
What happens if the oxes somehow kill each other?
Yeah, that's literally what he just asked. Except
Oh.
he implied intent, and I said it wouldn't matter. You both sell both dead oxes. Like for me, like you sell them to the butcher basically.
But if you kill
And then
4,
you each get half the price of each dead ox. So you'd come out behind. You'd start with living oxes, you'd end up with the money of dead oxes. Yeah.
Okay, I was very confused.
So, can I tell you about like a cow, like a bull we used to have? So like we used to have a bull, but it killed itself by poisoning itself, but we don't have it anymore.
Ow.
Yes, I'm glad you now they do that.
How did it
What?
poison
It
itself?
was eating the bull thistle.
Oh.
The what?
The bull thistle.
Specifically a
It's
plant
like a
known to
plant
kill
here.
bulls? Is that why it's called bull
Poison.
thistle?
Yeah, it's called bull thistle.
Because it kills bulls?
It gets, I don't know if it's what it's called.
I
think
wanna
it
look
has-
this up
I
now.
think it looks like the plant has horns on it. I think that's why.
Yeah, wisdom.
So going back to the car
Oh.
accident part,
Sure.
so what happens if you're driving a $1,000 and they're driving like a $200,000?
Yeah, no, it sucks to be you. Like
Okay.
you pay more for the more expensive car usually. So then you end up paying, equal share, but it would have been more than
What
you
if
pay for
they're
just
on
a
a
cheap
bike?
car.
I was finished with that.
What if they're on a bike?
What if no, bike
What
is
if
bad.
you purposely
It's never
hit
50-50.
I'm finished with this story.
Hey, Gavin.
And then you're dead.
What if
Yeah.
they
Gavin, you should have asked before you did that.
Sorry.
I-
Take my mind off hunger.
Okay,
Literally,
well,
What if
I
you
had no
purposely hit the
breakfast.
Gavin, you could ask for food, man. You don't have to resort to distraction.
I was not.
You don't have to shrug after I say you could ask for food. Like you could ask for food.
if you're a hitman and you purposely hit the person's car?
Jeremiah, can you find anything to let him nosh on? Is there anything around?
You can watch
Chips.
your might eat.
That sounds great. I'm pretty sure there's actually a Bible verse about just saying to hungry people, eat,
I was.
be filled, and then not giving them food.
Eat
Popcorn,
it.
pop some popcorn. Dude, you can have popcorn.
Daniel, I was
That's
not
great.
finished with my story yet.
$3.
Oh, you were done?
No.
Oh my gosh, I thought, dead bull was the end of the story.
But no.
Oh.
So we had these rotten squash that we grew in our garden that was rotten, and so my mom told me to go feed them to the cows, and so I did. So I just threw it in the field, towards the bowl, and I thought coincidentally, like, it could perfectly hit the squash on his head and it, like, crashed and broke it, and he just ignored it and kept eating it.
He just didn't even care.
No.
You chucked an entire gourd at his head and didn't even care.
Wolves have
That's amazing.
wolves have
What if you
They have-
purposely?
I love how they have such a reputation for temper tantrums, and you can like throw a gourd at their head and they just don't even care.
they can be so angry, but
The MythBuster episode on bulls is
They're-
amazing. If you guys ever get the chance to watch it, it's
What is it
fantastic.
about?
Like the bull in the China shop myth, we say that meaning like destroys everything in anger, and then they made a mock China shop in a bullpen and like let the bull into it, and the bull like carefully went down the aisles of the fake China shop and like didn't bump into anything. It was hysterical.
in what for him?
Hysterical.
That's
Huh?
In what?
At Mythbusters, they just do that kind of stuff for fun. Okay, last verse. Who's got the last verse? Peach, read us the last verse.
All it no, if it was known that the ox tended to trust in the past and its owner has not kept it confined, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal shall be his own.
Okay, so if you have Gory Joe ox that just loves to gore, and it kills another animal, okay, not a human this time, it just kills another animal, the rule is you have to give a live ox to the owner of the dead ox. But you get the dead ox. So you are in a mandatory trade situation. You must upgrade the owner from his dead ox back to a living ox, and you get the dead ox. I love the edge cases.
I
I'm
feel
always
like
thinking,
that's
like you
fair.
guys, the hypothetical extra edge cases. Like, okay, but what if the owner of the Gory Joe ox, like, only owns that one ox? So the only ox he can give the person whose ox he killed is Gory Joe. And then the guy who lost an ox now gets a goring ox, and it's like the only ox that he can give him. It doesn't cover this, but I just think it's funny. Like, that'd be a serious bummer. But like, yeah, it's simple. You robbed that person of a living ox. You left them with a dead ox. Okay, fix it. How do you fix it? Is it the death penalty? Is it money? No! Just give him a living ox. Okay, that works. But then what's he going to do with the dead ox? Well, actually, it's yours now. You just bought a dead ox.
Keep it.
Congratulations.
You sell it and
You're the
then buy a
proud new
box.
owner of a crashed car. Wouldn't that be interesting if we didn't have car insurance? You just had to buy the broken car from the person whose car you destroyed.
That'd be
Everyone would
weird.
think that you're stupid.
And you had to buy him a new car.
Sell your old car to get the new car.
That's essentially what the law is, except in the oxen scenario, most people owned more than one ox. Very few people were the owners of one ox. They usually had several, so it'd be easier to just take one of your spares and give it to them. That's not always the way with cars.
Give 'em
Let me
a
run home.
break.
I have an old beater you can have. Like, here you go. I know it's not the same. So yeah, at least with oxen, you can't get too far off the path of like for like. They're going to be pretty similar. So, what is the point in all this? Well, God's preparing for an entire nation of people who are going to follow him, worship him, live under his rules and his guidance. And he doesn't leave anything to chance. Like, he doesn't leave anything out. I think this is really beautiful because God promises that at the end of this age, at the end of the earth being as it is right now, he's going to set up his own kingdom. He's going to be here, and he's going to be judging and ruling and reigning. He's going to be in charge for 1,000 years on this planet. And when he gets here, some people who don't believe in him might be wondering, like, well, if that's true, how do I know he's going to be good at it? If that's true, how do I know I really want him in charge of me? What if he's just like those politicians I hate? What if he's just like those politicians who can't do anything the way I think things should be done? And to that, you can look at the Old Testament and you can say, look how wise he is to plan out in advance all of these extra rules, all of these extra stipulations, the what-ifs that he's already thought about and he already put on the page. And this shows his wisdom. This shows how genius God is, that he's beyond us and he's thinking up scenarios before they even happen. And so to think that there's going to come a time where he's actually in charge, where he is like the top politician, that's so cool. I so look forward to that day when I don't have to think about who to vote for. I've already voted for Jesus, and he's finally put into office, and he can just stay in office. I'm excited for that day when the political rat race is over, and now it's just Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. It's going to be really good. Yeah, Weston.
Smells like a movie theater.
I know, you probably have it the worst. It hasn't quite hit me yet. Yeah.
So wait, if God came back to be a politician, would would he look different than he was at the time that he was
Okay,
dead?
I think you're creating a brand new hypothetical because what I'm talking about is specifically laid out that he is different, but he's also the same. So he has his body from his resurrection, not his body from his earthly life up to the cross. Does that make sense? There's a slight difference. His body was killed, buried, and then raised to new life. And it's raised to a life eternal. So it's not a body that can get sick. It's not a body that gets tired. It's not a body that has to eat or else it's going to die. It's different. At the same time, it's the same.
But no, what I'm asking, would you look like someone from this age, or would you still look like someone from that age?
Ooh, that's a hard question because like
That
what
is
we
a
define
hard
as that age and this age might be wrong. So like what we think of as that age might not actually be what's really of that age. Does that make sense? Like we don't have good paintings from his era. We don't. Good paintings came after. So like most of those pictures of Jesus, old paintings of Jesus, those were made hundreds of years after Jesus was on the earth. Those painters never saw Jesus. So they're just guessing too. I mean, you can find some really hilarious pictures of like Roman times where they're wearing British clothes. Because like they didn't have a clue what Romans wore. So they just like made them wear British clothes. Like they didn't know. It's like we have some serious like misconceptions about what Jesus would have looked like. Usually Jesus has hair that's just a little bit past his shoulder and a beard that's nicely trimmed right to here, and he's white. None of those things match up with what we know about people of his time and in his place. None of them. So like nearly every painting you've ever seen of Jesus is probably categorically wrong about everything.
His beard couldn't be next.
Well, I mean, on his heavenly body, I'd imagine his beard's
They
perfect.
didn't have any razors.
But I don't know. Maybe he's clean shaven. I don't know. Like maybe
How
he
would
just
you
decided,
shave if he was
you know what,
like
this
you?
time I'm not gonna have a beard. I don't know. It's up to him. He can have whatever he wants. My point is, yeah, he might look identical to what he looked like then. It still wouldn't mean we would expect what he looks like.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, it
Well,
probably
what I
isn't what
mean
we're
is,
expecting.
Like, would he be up to like, would he like look like a normal human?
Like
these
wearing a
days?
business suit? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
Business suit.
Like
People
not wearing
don't
a
look
business
that
suit,
different
but
for over the last 2,000 years. There's some changes, sure, but like not like 1,000%. They're still human. You know what I mean? Like they didn't look that different. So I mean, but he's from a different part of the world, so he would look a lot different from you and I. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why, why in the Bible does everybody wear sandals, and like why do those people not have shoes?
Good question. Okay. A, they hadn't invented shoes. Okay, that required stitching like they didn't have. B, it was stinking hot.
Fair
They didn't have the super cold winters. You basically had to go to places where it was cold if you wanted it to be cold. They did have high desert, so it would get really, really cold at night, but they just didn't go out, like if they could help it. And then also, their roads were super nasty, and socks didn't exist. So if you wear shoes with no socks in nasty, dirty conditions, you get chafing like mad. Like, it just gets all in there. You want to be able to like rinse your feet off in a river every chance you get. You want to be able to just wash off your whole lower leg as often as you can. So like shoes would fight against that. Shoes just don't work when you don't have socks, when you don't have roads, when you don't have the stitching to make them nice. Like they're just worse. Sandals are simpler. Yeah.
It's really funny. Me and my family, like the guy who plays Jesus in The Chosen, me and my family all like picture Jesus looking like.
That's why they picked him.
now.
They knew that.
But it's really funny just because he looks like such a sweet guy, and we just like picture him looking like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Weston.
Couldn't they just take cloth and just wrap it on their foot?
I'm sure they could, and maybe in a pinch some of them even did. I don't know. I didn't live back then, but we don't have like good records of that occurring. All the references we have to footwear are sandals. So I'm sure if you go back far enough, that like the majority of people were just barefoot. You know, but at Jesus' time, that was already long gone. Leather tanning was such a well refined craft at that point that like you could get leather for all kinds of purposes. So making sandals was pretty easy. But yeah, it's also just cheap. It's not a lot of leather to make a sandal. Not a lot of stitching to make a sandal. It's like a really, really easy thing compared to everything else we've ever stuck on our feet. Okay, no more questions? No more ideas? No more things about the end of the world and Jesus reigning and ruling for 1,000 years? Yes?
I don't really have one.
Oh, okay. So I'm excited for that. I like to see God's wisdom put on display. I want to make clear as we go through Exodus, as we go through the Old Testament in general, that these rules and these laws were not written by God so that you, right now in 2021, would know what to do when an ox gores your neighbor. Like, that's not even why he wrote these, okay? So the same is true of all the other rules exactly the same way. When you hear Jesus talking about the rules in the New Testament, when you hear Paul writing about the rules in the New Testament, their references to those rules make it really clear what they're for. They're to show you God's heart, okay? Number one, like, what does God think about right and wrong? But then they're also to show you that you're not perfect and you don't do things 100% right every time, all the time. And that you can't. And that's like the really big deal of it. The law is there to remind you there isn't a perfect person on this planet. There just isn't one. Jesus was the only one who stuck to the perfect standard because the perfect standard is such a ridiculously hard standard. It is so far away from what we can accomplish. And then the New Testament goes on and it says, but the idea of showing you you're not perfect, showing you you're not good enough on your own, was to remind you who is. That there is a who is. There is someone who's perfect, and he actually wants to lend his righteousness to you. He wants to put his righteousness on you so that you can be righteous before a righteous and a holy God. You can stand up in front of God and be righteous. That's an amazing thing, to be wearing the righteousness of Christ. So we're going to pray right now. I want you guys, as you look at the Old Testament, to always be reminded of those facts. God is perfect. He loves you. You're not perfect. He still loves you. Let's pray. Lord, we love you. You first loved us. And we ask, Lord, that you would remind us of that daily, not just when we look at the Old Testament, not just when we look at the New Testament, Lord, but that whenever we stop to think, whenever we stop to pray, that you would just renew in our hearts that sense that you have a great love for us. Thank you, Lord, for that, for all you did in the Old Testament, laying out your heart for all to see, and all that you've done after that with Jesus on the cross, dying in our place, Lord, taking our punishment on you. Thank you, Lord, that you loved us that much. And we ask now that you would move on the hearts of these middle schoolers, on the other people in this building right now, hearing your word taught, preached, explained. Lord, just move on these hearts and move people towards you. Help them to see all that you have for them. If you're sitting here right now and you're realizing how much God loves you, that he has a plan for you laid out for your future, then you would like to walk in that plan. You'd like to embrace his love, return it, love him back. If you would like to ask for his forgiveness right now and just enter into his family and embrace all those things I've been talking about, you can do it. You can raise up your hand and just say, me, I want to do that. And I'll pray with you. The Bible says the way you do that is just by asking for forgiveness, putting your faith in to Jesus Christ, the one who died in your place, the one who's offering you his righteousness. So if you want that right now, just put up your hand just to show me that that's you. And I'll pray with you. You can ask him for that directly. I'll just help you with the words. But you can talk to him. Anyone today? All right, Lord, I ask that you would bless these middle schoolers as they go. Help them in everything they have in front of them this week, and just remind them daily how much you love them. We love you too, Jesus. We pray this in your name. Amen. Right on. I love you guys. Don't forget to sign up for summer camp. It's on the website, ccchico.com. Go sign up on the middle school page. If you want to go straight there, ccchico.com/MSSC. Don't forget. Oh yeah, phone bucket. If you guys have a phone in the phone bucket, don't leave.
Yeah, thank you.
Wait, if you wait 5 seconds, you can get a prize. Wow.
Definitely not gonna win.
Winner!
Yes.
Oh, that's not mine.
My food.
I didn't rig it. I don't know whose phone is whose. I can't rig it.
What if it was your phone?
Yeah, can you cut?
We were talking about the Pitsmith thing. At the time when my sister was married, my brother-in-law had tried to dig a giant hole in his backyard to do like kind of like almost like a hang out like opposite of a tree house, like a underground.
Underground like hideout.
Just for fun, it's like a fun like project she was working on.
I would totally love that.
Well, we also had a little neighbor boy that lived like in the backyard, and the fence that we had, he put little hinges on the fence boards, so it was a little door and the kids could play together. So every time they're in the backyard, they could go to each other's backyard. It was like one big backyard. My brother-in-law goes out and he hears, "Excuse me." The little boy from the yard across the way had fallen into the pit, and we have no idea how long he was there.
It's like in the pit.
It was a weekend, and his like little fingernails were like covered in dirt, like he was trying to get out. My brother-in-law was just heartbroken. He like helped him out of the pit, and the kid just like booked it home as fast as he could. Like didn't even talk. It was the saddest thing ever. And it was probably like 7 feet deep. It was like
Well, yeah, he's gonna make a room down there.
it was really sad.
Man.
But we caught one.
Yeah.
We caught a kid.
I think they called it a man trap.
Wait, Daniel.
All right, guys, who's got the green pixel art wallpaper?
That was me. I don't have. I'm writing on.
I'm guessing it's him.
Can eighth graders go to junior high camp?
They can go to high school camp
Okay.
if there's a high school camp.
Yes.
So that's a no.
What if you go to?
Yeah, Cody, you're
Done.
Never been.
I did it 2 years ago. I had to leave like 3 hours.
I don't make the rules for high school.
We're getting
Technically,
around,
if
you
you're
got
eligible for ours, you could try and work your way into that one. But if you're eligible for that one, I know you're not. I don't know whether to be like. So you have to come to ours.
Yeah, I am.
I mean, humility
Once
is
you can
always a good thing. But I know that you're humble, so I will let you know.
I know I'm at least a good wrestler, like to some extent.
I'd want to know if people were enjoying
If you are graduating in 8th grade at the end of this school year,
I thought you should
you are
know.
going to graduating from 8th grade. Sorry, graduating from 8th grade. You will be a high
I
school.
said it, I'm going to go home and read it. Don't let
So you can't go to a middle school. You can't. You go to a high school. I know that that's sad, but it's the way it works. Thank you, Lexi.
Of course.
Last week was very weird. I don't know if you heard.
What happened? What ended up happening? I'm sorry, I had a wedding.
Oh, it's fine. It's totally fine. So I was sick and I hadn't had my test results yet, so I was on quarantine.
I know, I was praying for you.
So I rigged up a video call to where I could stick my face on the big screen and I could talk through the speakers.
No way.
And I can hear those microphones coming to me.
Oh, wow.
And so I just like, the kids were here in the room and I was on this, I like lived in the screen. And I played a game with them. I did a giant word search on the screen. And since I have cameras, I could see them going up to the